Hi, Michelle Florendo here, and welcome to Ask a Decision Engineer. Listen in and find out how to untangle big decisions with less stress and more clarity. In today's episode, I'll be talking about why it's important not to ignore feelings in decision making, but instead to acknowledge and examine them. I'll touch on how naming your feelings can help you get unstuck, how tuning into feelings can help you make better decisions aligned with what you actually want, and how becoming adept at assessing what your feelings are telling you can help you make decisions more quickly. By the end of the episode, I hope you'll see why feelings can be a friend instead of a foe in decision making. A while back, I was having a coaching session with a client, and this client was trying to decide between two job offers they had. One at an up-and-coming Series A funded healthcare startup, and the other at a big multinational tech unicorn. He was relaying to me what had happened in one of his previous conversations with his mentor. He was telling his mentor about all the things that he loved about the smaller healthcare startup. But then his mentor said, leave the emotions out of it. Look at the calculated expected value of the offer and make your decision based on that. Oh, I remember when I heard that, I had cringed. I understood where the sentiment came from. Both my client and their mentor had attended a big, well-known engineering school, and I myself had spent years learning probabilistic analysis, constructing decision trees, calculating expected net present value. I get it. For some, logic and calculations offer comforting clarity, while on the other hand, emotions may feel more ephemeral and opaque and untrustworthy when it comes to decision making. However, we need to stop thinking that the best decisions are ones made in an emotional vacuum. There's a cost to ignoring how we feel. At best, we leave useful data on the table. But at worst, we waste time beholden to emotions that do have a powerful hold over us. We make decisions that deliver on the opposite of what we actually want, and we exhaust ourselves by only using a portion of the brain power that we could possibly be using. One of the reasons we need to face our feelings in decision making is because ignoring strong feelings may be the reason we feel stuck in the first place. Naming those feelings helps us avoid wasting too much time in inaction. So the next time you find yourself stuck in decision making, take a moment to check in and identify how you're feeling, because it's those feelings and naming them that could be the key to getting unstuck. I'll share a personal story. I remember back when I was in my very first job after college. Within a year and a half, I knew it was not a good fit. It was not where I wanted to spend the rest of my career. But for months, I did nothing. I showed up at work knowing that I was on a path that was not going to bear fruit for me. But for some reason, I felt I couldn't tell anyone. I was stuck. Eventually, I realized that the feelings that were keeping me from moving forward were not necessarily any sort of analysis paralysis or fear of making the wrong decision, but it was more guilt and shame. I felt guilty that I had this really great job on paper. I was able to pay my bills. I was able to live on my own in San Francisco. I was able to buy what I wanted and take vacations wherever I wanted to go. Anyone out there in the external world would be lucky to have this job. So I felt guilty for not being happy. I also felt a sense of shame. Wow, how could I have gotten this so wrong? I'm so smart. How is it that I could have made such a bad decision? It was only once I acknowledged what I was feeling in the moment and how they were keeping me stuck that I was able to move forward and lean more into the feelings that were drawing me more toward possibility and what would be right for me next. So, the next time you're feeling stuck, instead of beating yourself up for not taking action, yet curious about what feelings are present, name the feeling and name what you are committed to. It's easier to take action when you realize that what you want, whether it's hope, happiness, justice, is more important than the feeling that is stopping you. The second reason why it's important to take our feelings into account in the midst of decision making is because listening carefully to our feelings helps us make decisions that are truly aligned with our values. Remember the client that I described at the beginning of this episode? When he told me that his mentor had told him to ignore his feelings and simply pay attention to the financial expected value of the job offer? I cringed because his mentor was essentially telling him to ignore the feelings he had about what made the other offer attractive. And it's this piece, when we ignore how we feel in decision making and try to make decisions in an emotional vacuum, that we're leaving data on the table, and often critical data that will help us make decisions that are aligned with what's actually best for us. I remember I once had a client who was so numb to her own feelings about the career decisions that she made that she was caught in this cycle. She would choose a job based on pay and prestige, these things that everyone around her and even society told her she should care about. But then she would grow dissatisfied with the job. She would look for another job, but then she would choose another job based on those same externally defined criteria. It wasn't until she stopped ignoring her own feelings and desires that she was able to identify what really mattered to her and then make a decision based on that. Being able to listen to our feelings so that we can make values-driven decisions has implications beyond personal decisions as well. How often have you heard of a corporation making a decision that significantly damages the environment, communities, local economies, or even their own workers? Yet, when pressed about why they made this decision, leaders justify the decision by saying, it's just business. You see, encouraging leaders to leave emotion out of decision-making prevents them from giving enough weight to other values that may not be as obviously focused on as profit. In these times, as we continue to witness the lasting effects of an it's just business approach to decision-making, it's the type of leadership that is more values-driven in decision-making and can tune into the emotions that tell them what else may be important that is needed. Developing an ability to recognize how to appropriately extract data from these feelings and use it in decision-making is what enables people to lead with their head and their heart, and can ultimately lead to a better world for everyone. The third reason why it's important to learn how to tap into our feelings in decision-making is because it allows us to exercise an intelligence that works faster. Daniel Goleman, a former New York Times science reporter, psychologist, and the author of Leadership, The Power of Emotional Intelligence, has mentioned the intelligence of the gut in many of his talks. He says, our life wisdom, our life experience is collected out of our awareness constantly as we go through life. When faced with a decision, the part of our brain where emotions sit gets a summary of all these lived experiences. Yet all of this is processed in a different part of the brain than the one that thinks with logic and words. So when we ignore our gut, our intuition, all those feelings, we leave all of that lived experience information on the table. What's even more interesting is that this particular system of thinking, what Daniel Kahneman from Thinking Fast and Slow calls System 1, is that it's incredibly fast. It's the part of our neurological system that evolved to process vast amounts of information in an instant in order to help us survive. When there was a loud noise in the bushes at night, it wouldn't have worked to use our logical, slow-thinking, resource-intensive System 2 thinking to assess whether there was a danger that demanded an immediate response. And so when we ignore our feelings, we also keep ourselves from tapping into this amazingly fast part of our brain. Furthermore, studies have shown that emotions and feelings are essential in decision-making. There's also research out there that demonstrates the absolutely essential role that emotions and feelings play in decision-making. Studies have indicated that people who have suffered certain types of brain damage also suffer significant impairment to their ability to make decisions. However, contrary to what one might think, it's not the logical, slow-thinking part of the brain that has been impaired, but rather the parts of the brain that process emotions and brain-body exchanges such as those that produce that gut instinct feeling. Such findings point to how critical the feeling part of our brain is to helping us make decisions, especially when there's no clear logical answer, or in the case of uncertain outcomes. When we ignore feelings and gut instincts, we're ignoring a part of our brain that works quickly, a part of our brain we may need when we need to make decisions on a faster timeline. And in the end, by relying only on our System 2 slow thinking, we exhaust ourselves to the point where we suffer from decision fatigue. Where do we go from here? So often, when feelings come up, I see people have one of two reactions. On one hand, maybe they let it completely flood over them and wash over them. And in that situation, yes, that's when feelings might cloud our judgment. On the other end of the spectrum, some people might completely distance themselves from their feelings and just try to live in the cognitive or logical. I think what's more useful, though, is a middle ground between the two. I find that the more we can get curious about what is the feeling that's coming up and what is it telling us about our process, the more useful it can become in moving forward with a good decision. And so, if you have feelings come up, it can be useful to take a step back, not ignore, but observe. Take an engineering lens and try to get at what is the data. Ask yourself, how can I learn more about these inputs for the decision problem I'm trying to solve? Remember, feelings can be a valuable source of data, just as much as our cognitive assessment of things. Tune in. Ask yourself, where's that coming from? Why is this feeling coming up? Is it because there's a particular objective or value that is not being acknowledged? Is it because I feel constrained in my options? Do I have a sense of knowing based on my intuition and summary of past experiences? Or is this a feeling stemming from a discomfort with not knowing? Perhaps it's simply the discomfort of not having reached a resolution yet. In this season, you'll hear a number of different examples of feelings arising in someone's decision-making process, and I'll unpack what those feelings are, what they can tell us, and what to do about them. My hope is that by the end of this season, you too develop more of an ability to observe your own feelings and learn what you can do to use those insights to make decisions with less stress and more clarity. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you heard something today that you found helpful, please share this episode or write a review. Also, if you're interested in more resources on how to make decisions with less stress and more clarity, go to askadecisionengineer.com to sign up for the mailing list. I'll be teaching a class on decision analysis and emotional awareness for Stanford Continuing Studies this fall, and my email list subscribers will be some of the first people to get updates about that. Again, this is Michelle Florendo from Ask a Decision Engineer. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.